Welcome to the world of science fiction, where extraordinary tales come to life. Enjoy the journey. Warning: critical system failure imminent. Alan Gass slammed his fist against the blinking control panel of the Rusty Hope as another alarm joined the cacophony of warnings. The ship shuddered around him, emergency lights casting an eerie red glow across the cramped cockpit. "Come on, baby. Just hold together for 5 more minutes," he muttered, his fingers dancing across the controls. The view through the scratched viewport showed the looming bulk of Alpha 9 trading station, its massive docking rings gleaming in the light of the nearby binary stars. The ship's AI chirped again, its formerly feminine voice now glitching into something that sounded like a dying cat. War warning. Engine core temperature exceeding safe parameters." "Yeah, no kidding." Alan wiped sweat from his forehead, his styled black hair now a mess. His expensive designer jacket, the last remnant of better days, felt suffocating in the overheated cockpit. The cargo in his hold was already 3 days late, and now this. His reputation as a courier couldn't get much worse, but at least he still had his looks. Small consolation when you're about to become space debris. The docking computer beeped for attention. Alan squinted at the display, trying to make sense of the corrupt characters scrolling across the screen. "Request manual override," he commanded, grabbing the controls. "Manual override not override accepted," he cut off the AI, taking control. The station's massive docking ring filled his view as he guided the ship with practiced precision, despite the shuddering controls. A voice crackled over the comm. "Courier vessel Rusty Hope, you're coming in hot. Your engine signature is way into the red, directing you to emergency dock 7. "Copy that, Alpha 9 Control. Trust me, I know." The ship groaned as Alan executed a perfect emergency docking maneuver, the kind they'd taught at the academy before he'd washed out. The magnetic clamps engaged with a thunderous clang that echoed through the hull. "Welcome to Alpha 9 Trading Station," a cheerful automated voice announced as the docking tube sealed against his airlock. "Please ensure all weapons are properly registered," and Alan was already out of his seat, grabbing his courier ID and digital wallet. He needed a mechanic fast before his latest client decided to send bounty hunters after their overdue package. The station's massive docking area was a chaos of sounds, smells, and species. Merchants hawked their wares from cramped stalls. Maintenance bots whirred between ships, and the air was thick with the mingled aromas of a dozen different worlds' cuisines. "Hey, pretty boy!" A tentacled mechanic waved multiple appendages at him. "That heap of yours needs work, eh? Special price for you." Alan started to reply when movement caught his eye. An elderly alien woman was struggling with several ornate bags near a luxury transport. Her skin was a deep purple, marked with swirling patterns that seemed to shift in the station's artificial light. White hair cascaded down her back in intricate braids. She stumbled, one of the bags slipping from her grip. Without thinking, Alan lunged forward, catching it before it hit the deck. The bag was surprisingly heavy, with something inside that hummed against his palms. Oh, such quick reflexes. The woman's voice was melodious, her accent exotic but clear. And such strength, too. Her eyes twinkled as she looked him up and down. "Just trying to help, ma'am." Alan handed the bag back carefully. "These docking bays can be treacherous if you're not used to the artificial gravity fluctuations." The woman's face split into a wide smile that showed perfect, pearlescent teeth. So handsome, so strong, and so polite. Oh, this is perfect. She suddenly threw her head back and shouted something in a language Alan's translator couldn't catch. The busy docking bay went silent. Hundreds of faces turned toward them. Is everything okay?" Alan asked, taking a step back. Years of courier work had taught him when situations were about to go sideways. The woman's voice rang out again, this time in perfect standard. "This human has offered marriage to my granddaughter." Alan's jaw dropped. "Wait. What? No, The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone started playing what sounded like ceremonial music, and through the gathering crowd, Alan saw a tall figure approaching that made his heart stop. Through the parting crowd walked the most striking woman Alan had ever seen. Her skin was the same royal purple as her grandmother's, but smoother, almost luminescent under the station lights. Her hair cascaded down her back in waves the color of a desert sunset, adorned with small crystalline ornaments that caught the light. She moved with the fluid grace of a predator, her perfectly proportioned figure hugged by what appeared to be some kind of advanced combat suit. But it was her eyes that truly caught him. They were like liquid silver, with subtle hints of violet that seemed to flash when she fixed her gaze on him. And right now, those eyes were studying him with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. "Grandmother," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that somehow managed to sound dangerous. "This is the one." "Oh yes, Rima. You should have seen how he caught my bags. Such gallantry, such timing. And look at his bone structure. Our children will be beautiful." Alan finally found his voice. "There's been a huge misunderstanding. I was just helping with some bags that were about to fall. That's all." Rima Tutuns circled him slowly, her movement reminding him of the big cats he'd seen in Earth's preserved wildlife zones. "Helping the family matriarch with her burdens is one of our most sacred traditions," she said matter-of-factly. "It is considered the ultimate gesture of proving one's worth as a potential mate." "But I didn't know that," Alan protested, becoming increasingly aware of the growing crowd. "Look, I'm just a courier. My ship is literally falling apart at the docking clamps right now. I need to—" Quick as lightning, Rima's hand shot out, catching his wrist in a grip that was surprisingly strong. She pulled him closer, her silver eyes mere inches from his face. The scent of something exotic and spicy filled his nostrils. "Are you saying," she asked softly, dangerously, "that you wish to dishonor my grandmother's blessing?" Alan swallowed hard. "I'm saying there are probably 1,000 cultural protocols I'm violating right now without even knowing it." A slight smile tugged at the corner of Rima's mouth. "At least you're smart enough to admit your ignorance. That's somewhat appealing." The grandmother clapped her hands delightedly. "Oh, they're already flirting. This is going even better than I hoped." "We are not flirting," Alan and Rima said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Rima released his wrist and stepped back, her expression unreadable. "Grandmother, perhaps we should—" She was interrupted by a loud explosion from the direction of Alan's ship. Everyone turned to see smoke pouring from one of the Rusty Hope's engine ports. "Oh no," Alan groaned, already running toward his vessel. He hadn't made it 3 steps before Rima caught up with him, keeping pace effortlessly. "Your ship appears to be in distress," she observed calmly. "Really? What gave it away? The explosion or the smoke?" Her eyes narrowed. "Sarcasm is considered a sign of intelligence in our culture. You're not helping your case." They reached the ship just as a second, smaller explosion sent a shower of sparks raining down. The tentacled mechanic from earlier was backing away quickly, all of his appendages raised in surrender. "I didn't touch nothing," he insisted. "It just started going crazy on its own." Alan rushed to the access panel, his fingers flying over the emergency controls. "The core containment is failing. If I can't stabilize it—" "Move!" Rima commanded, physically pushing him aside. Before he could protest, she had ripped off the panel cover with her bare hands and plunged her arm into the smoking circuitry. "Are you insane?" Alan shouted. "The core temperature is dropping," she finished, her arm moving with precise movements inside the machinery. "Your cooling system was sabotaged. Someone replaced the primary regulator with a counterfeit. Amateur work, really." Alan stared at her in disbelief. "You're an engineer." "I'm many things," she replied cryptically, withdrawing her arm. The smoke had already begun to dissipate. "Your ship will need proper repairs, but it won't explode now." "Thank you," Alan said, genuinely impressed. "But how did you know—" "A warrior must understand all aspects of combat," she said, as if this explained everything, "including mechanical." The grandmother had caught up to them now, surrounded by a small entourage of what appeared to be security personnel and other family members. "Oh, Look how well they work together already. This is clearly meant to be. Grandmother, Rima said respectfully, perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. My potential mate's ship requires significant repairs. Alan started to object to being called her potential mate, but something in her silver eyes made him hold his tongue. Of course, the grandmother agreed. We'll have his ship moved to our private dock, and he must join us for dinner to discuss the courtship details. I really don't think, Alan began. Unless, Rima cut in smoothly, you wish to officially reject our hospitality. That would, of course, be your right, though it might make future business in this sector difficult. Alan looked around the docking bay. Every alien face he could see was watching the exchange with intense interest. He thought about his failing ship, his late delivery, his dwindling funds, and the fact that Alpha 9 was a major hub for courier contracts. He forced a smile. Dinner would be lovely. Excellent, the grandmother beamed. Rima, dear, why don't you escort your betrothed while I make the arrangements? Of course, grandmother. Rima's hand closed around Alan's arm again, her grip just tight enough to be uncomfortable. Come, my betrothed. Let me show you our customs regarding formal dining. I'm sure you'll find them enlightening. As she led him away, Alan could have sworn he heard her mutter under her breath. Try not to faint when you see the ceremonial daggers. The private section of Alpha 9 was a stark contrast to the chaotic docking areas. Here, the corridors were wide and elegantly decorated with flowing patterns that reminded Alan of the markings on Rima's skin. Soft, ambient light seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, and the air carried a subtle fragrance he couldn't identify. Your family must be important, he ventured, still trying to process his situation. I didn't even know Alpha 9 had a private sector. The Tutuns clan has interests in various trading routes, Rima replied vaguely. She hadn't released his arm, but her grip had relaxed slightly. And grandmother enjoys her comforts. They passed several other purple-skinned aliens who bowed respectfully to Rima. Alan noticed that most of them wore some form of ceremonial armor or combat suits similar to hers. So, your people are warriors, he asked, trying to gather information that might help him navigate this mess. Rima's lips curved in what might have been amusement. The Nexari are traditional. We believe that true strength comes from maintaining ancient ways while mastering new ones. She glanced at him. Your ship, for instance. The modifications you made to the hyperdrive matrix were clever, if crude. You could tell that just from a glance. I can tell many things from a glance, Alan gasped. The way she said his name sent an unexpected shiver down his spine. Like the fact that you're plotting escape routes even as we walk. He tried to look innocent. Don't bother denying it. It's actually somewhat impressive, though you should know that the ventilation shaft you've been eyeing is equipped with neural stunners. They arrived at a massive door decorated with intricate metalwork. Rima placed her palm against a scanner, and the door slid open silently. Welcome to the family dining hall, she announced, leading him inside. Alan's jaw dropped. The room was enormous, with a ceiling that seemed to disappear into darkness above. A long table dominated the center, crafted from what appeared to be a single piece of some crystalline material. The walls were lined with what he first took to be decorative displays, but then realized were various weapons and armor pieces. Are those real? He asked, pointing to what looked like an ancient battle axe. Every piece has tasted blood in combat, Rima confirmed casually. The ceremonial daggers are in that case over there, by the way. Try not to stare when grandmother brings them out. You weren't kidding about the daggers? I never kid about traditions. She finally released his arm and gestured to a seat. Sit. We should talk before the others arrive. Alan sat, noticing that the chair adjusted itself to his body automatically. Look, about this whole marriage thing. You wish to reject the proposal, she stated flatly. Well, yes. I mean, you seem... He searched for a diplomatic word. Fascinating. But we just met, and this is all happening because I helped with some bags. Rima leaned forward, those silver eyes capturing his. Let me be clear about your situation, Alan Gass. By helping my grandmother, you invoked one of our most sacred customs. If you reject the proposal now, it will be seen as an insult to our entire clan. And what would that mean exactly? Best case scenario, you'll be banned from every trading route controlled by the Nexari or our allies, which, by the way, is about 60% of this sector. She paused. Worst case? Well, we do have a lot of ceremonial weapons that haven't tasted blood in a while. Alan ran a hand through his hair in frustration. So what am I supposed to do? Just marry you? A slight smile played at her lips. There is another option. You could undertake the traditional trials. Trials? 3 challenges to prove your worth. If you fail them, the marriage proposal is dissolved with no loss of honor to either party. Her smile widened slightly. Of course, most of our warriors train their entire lives to pass these trials. And if I refuse both options, then you better hope your ship's hyperdrive can outrun Nexari war cruisers. She sat back, studying him. Though I must admit, you're handling this better than our last accidental suitor. He fainted when grandmother mentioned the blood oath ceremony. Despite himself, Alan felt a laugh escape. There's a blood oath ceremony too? Several, actually. Was that amusement in her voice? Though grandmother usually saves those for the second date. Before Alan could respond, the doors swung open again. The grandmother entered, followed by what appeared to be an entire entourage of Nexari officials and servants. Oh good, you're getting to know each other, she beamed. Rima, dear, has he agreed to the marriage yet? We were just discussing the trials, grandmother. The older woman's face fell slightly. The trials? But he's so pretty. It would be a shame if he got dismembered. Dismembered? Alan squeaked. Only if you fail spectacularly, Rima assured him. Most just end up with minor injuries or comas. The grandmother clapped her hands and servants began bringing in dishes that steamed and glowed in various colors. Well, let's not worry about that now. First, we feast. Then we can discuss the details of either the wedding or the trials. She winked at Alan. Though I do hope you choose the wedding. The trials are so messy, and I've already started planning the ceremony. As the table filled with exotic dishes and more Nexari nobles filed in, Alan found himself studying Rima. Despite the absurdity of the situation, he couldn't help but notice how the light played across her purple skin, or the way her movements carried an elegant efficiency that spoke of years of training. When she caught him looking, she raised an eyebrow challengingly. Second thoughts about the trials? She asked quietly. Just wondering what I've gotten myself into. That, she said, her silver eyes glinting, is something we're both about to find out. The ceremonial dagger clattered against the dining table, its jeweled hilt catching the light. Alan stared at it, then at the expectant faces around him. So, he said carefully, just to be clear, I need to make my choice by stabbing the dagger into either the marriage contract or the trial scroll. Exactly, Grandmother Tutunes beamed, though traditionally it's done with more flourish. Rima leaned against a weapon-covered wall, her combat suit highlighting curves that Alan was trying very hard not to notice. Most suitors add a war cry, she suggested, a hint of challenge in her silver eyes. Alan picked up the dagger, testing its weight. The blade hummed slightly in his grip, some kind of energy running through the metal. He looked at the 2 documents before him, the ornate marriage contract on his left, the trial scroll on his right. With a swift motion, he plunged the dagger into the trial scroll. How's that for flourish? The assembled Nexari nobles burst into appreciative murmurs. Rima's eyebrow arched slightly, the ghost of a smile playing at her lips. Well done, she said, pushing off from the wall, though your war cry needs work. I'll practice for next time. Bold of you to assume there will be a next time. She moved closer, her presence making the air feel suddenly charged. The first trial begins tomorrow at dawn. I suggest you rest. Before Alan could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights began flashing and a computerized voice echoed through the halls. Security breach detected in private Dock 7. Unauthorized access to diplomatic storage. The grandmother's eyes widened. The bags! The artifact! Rima was already moving, her body shifting into a combat stance. Alan, with me. Consider this a preliminary test. I don't remember chase mysterious thieves being part of the traditional trials, he called, but followed her anyway as she sprinted from the dining hall. Consider it extra credit. They raced through the elegant corridors, Rima's long, sunset-colored hair streaming behind her like a banner. Alan kept pace surprisingly well. Years of dodging angry clients and repo men had kept him in shape. They reached the private dock just in time to see a sleek black ship detaching from the station. Through the viewport, Alan caught a glimpse of someone in a stealth suit clutching familiar-looking bags. "They're getting away," he said unnecessarily. Rima's silver eyes narrowed. "No, they're not." She pressed her palm against the security panel, and a hidden door slid open to reveal. "Is that a battle suit?" Alan asked, staring at the gleaming purple armor. "Custom design." Rima was already stepping into it, the armor conforming to her body like liquid metal. "Care to join me in a space chase, future husband?" "I thought you didn't want to marry me." The helmet formed around her head, but he could hear the amusement in her voice. "I don't, but watching you fail the trials might be entertaining." A second suit emerged from the wall. "Unless you're scared." Alan was already moving toward the armor. "You know, where I come from, people usually just go to dinner for a first date." "Boring." The word came out as a purr. "Now suit up. Let's see if you can keep up with a Nexari warrior." As the armor encased him, fitting perfectly despite never being measured for it, Alan had to admit, this beat dinner and a movie. The chase was on. The battlesuit responded to Alan's movements like a second skin, its neural interface syncing with his thoughts. Through the helmet's heads-up display, he watched Rima launch herself into space, her armor's propulsion system leaving a trail of purple energy. "Try to keep up," her voice purred through the comm. "But don't get too close. I wouldn't want to damage that pretty face before the trials." "Funny," Alan replied, activating his own thrusters. "I was about to say the same to you." He shot after her, the stars blurring around them as they pursued the thieves' ship. Years of piloting came in handy as he matched Rima's trajectory, weaving between station structures and docked vessels. "Not bad," she admitted. "Where did a courier learn to move like that?" "Let's just say some of my deliveries weren't exactly welcome." The black ship ahead of them suddenly dove, cutting through a dense cluster of cargo containers. Rima followed without hesitation, her movements fluid and precise. Alan watched in admiration as she spun through the obstacle course, her armor catching starlight. "See something you like?" she teased, catching him staring. "Just studying proper Nexari battle techniques," he shot back, following her lead through the maze. "Is that what they call it on Earth? Because on my world, that kind of looking usually leads to—" She cut off abruptly. "They're charging their jump drive." The black ship was indeed powering up, its engines glowing with telltale pre-jump energy. "We'll lose them," Alan shouted. "Not if I can help it." Rima's armor suddenly shifted, revealing what looked suspiciously like weapons. "Cover me." "Cover you? With what?" As if in answer, his own suit systems highlighted several offensive options. "Oh," he muttered. "Those." Rima fired first, her shots precisely targeting the ship's engine housing. The thieves returned fire, forcing them to separate and weave through the energy blasts. "Their shields are too strong," she called out. "We need to hit them simultaneously." Alan studied his HUD, an idea forming. "Those cargo containers. They're carrying Rigellian ale, right?" "What?" "Yes, but—" He was already moving, targeting the containers near the ship. "You know what happens when you supercool Rigellian ale too quickly." A pause then. "It explodes." "Alan, that's crazy." "I was going to say impressive." He could hear the grin in her voice. "On my mark." They fired together, their shots puncturing the containers just as the ship passed between them. The released ale, hit by the cold of space and their energy weapons, created a massive explosion that rocked the vessel. Direct hit, Alan whooped. Their engines are... The ship vanished in a flash of light, jumping away despite the damage. No! Rima's frustrated cry echoed through the comm. We almost had them. They floated in space for a moment, the debris of their battle drifting around them. Alan watched Rima's armored form, noting how even her anger seemed graceful. At least we know they're professionals, he offered. The way they handled that ship, the stealth tech, this wasn't random theft. Rima turned to face him, her helmet retracting to reveal her face. In the starlight, her purple skin seemed to glow, and her silver eyes reflected the distant explosions of the remaining ale. You're right, she said, studying him with new interest. And you handled yourself well out there. Perhaps these trials won't be as entertaining as I thought. Disappointed, intrigued, she moved closer, their suits almost touching. Though don't let it go to your head. The real trials will be much worse. Back on the station, they found Grandmother Tootens waiting with a security team. Her usual cheerful demeanor was gone, replaced by genuine concern. The artifact, she said without preamble. Did they take it? Rima nodded grimly. Along with everything else in the bags. What exactly was in there, Grandmother? The older woman's eyes darted around nervously. Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private. Alan, dear, you should come too. After all, you're family now. Potentially. They followed her to a secure chamber where she activated several layers of privacy shields before speaking. The artifact is called the Heart of Nexus, she explained. Well, let's just say it's very important to our people's future. Important enough for professional thieves to target it, Alan noted. Yes. Grandmother's expression turned serious. Which is why I'm officially combining your trials with a new mission. Find the artifact, return it safely, and you'll have proven your worth to our clan. And if I refuse? Then the trials proceed as normal. Rima's smile turned predatory. Starting with combat training. Right now. Before Alan could respond, she grabbed his arm and flipped him onto a nearby training mat that he hadn't even noticed was there. He landed hard, looking up to find her standing over him, that dangerous smile still in place. Lesson 1, she said, offering her hand. Always be ready. Alan took her hand but surprised her by pulling her down, rolling them both so he ended up on top. Their faces were inches apart, her silver eyes wide with surprise. Lesson 2, he said softly. Don't underestimate your opponent. For a moment, neither moved. Alan became acutely aware of every point where their bodies touched, of the warmth radiating from her purple skin, of the way her sunset hair fanned out around her head. Then she headbutted him. Lesson 3, she said, smoothly regaining her feet while he clutched his forehead. Don't get distracted. But he could have sworn he saw a flush of darker purple on her cheeks as she turned away. Grandmother Tutuns watched the exchange with obvious delight. Oh, this is going much better than I hoped. Such chemistry. Grandmother, Rima protested. What? I'm just saying, if you two wanted to skip the trials and move straight to the wedding. The trials continue, Rima said firmly, though she wouldn't meet Alan's eyes. Tomorrow, the combat arena. Be ready. As Alan watched her stride away, he couldn't help thinking that finding a stolen artifact might actually be easier than figuring out what was happening between them. The combat arena wasn't what Alan expected. Instead of the high-tech facility he'd imagined, it was a circular pit surrounded by ancient-looking stone tiers filled with eager spectators. The air smelled of incense and ozone, and traditional Nexari music throbbed through hidden speakers. Your opponent, Rima announced, gesturing to the other side of the arena, is Cathor, the undefeated. Alan stared at the massive alien entering the arena. 8 arms, each rippling with muscles, wielded different weapons. Its scaled skin gleamed under the lights, and its face was hidden behind a ceremonial mask. Undefeated, huh? Alan tugged at the collar of his borrowed combat suit. Let me guess, because nobody survives to tell the tale? Actually, He's quite peaceful outside the arena. Rima's silver eyes glinted with amusement. He runs a flower shop. You're joking. The purple snapdragons are his specialty. She stepped closer, adjusting his armor with practiced movements. Remember your training from yesterday? You mean the part where you threw me around for 6 hours? Exactly. Her fingers lingered on his chest plate. Try not to die. It would be inconvenient. Ah, you do care. I care about finding the artifact. But there was something in her voice that suggested otherwise. Now go. Show me what you've learned. Alan stepped into the arena, the crowd's roar washing over him. Cathor towered above him, all 8 arms twirling their weapons in complex patterns. Begin! The announcer's voice boomed. Cathor charged, weapons blurring. Alan dove and rolled, barely avoiding the first strike. His combat training kicked in, both from yesterday's session with Rima and his past experiences. He might not be a warrior, but he knew how to survive. The fight became a dance of sorts. Cathor had the advantage in strength and reach, but Alan was quicker, more agile. He dodged and weaved, looking for an opening while the crowd cheered and gasped. Then he saw it, a serving bot carrying drinks through the crowd. More specifically, carrying Centaurian ale, known for its extremely slippery properties when spilled. "Hey, Cathor!" Alan called out, backing toward the edge of the arena. "I heard your snapdragons were actually more of a mauve than purple." The massive alien roared, charging forward. Alan waited until the last possible moment, then ducked. Cathor's momentum carried him into the server bot, sending drinks flying everywhere. The alien's many feet lost their grip on the now slick floor. He windmilled his 8 arms, weapons clattering away as he tried to keep balance. The crowd went silent as the mighty warrior performed what looked like an improvised dance before finally crashing down with a thunderous impact. Alan helped him up, careful of the slippery floor. "Good fight, and for the record, I'm sure your snapdragons are perfectly purple." Cathor's mask retracted, revealing a surprisingly gentle face. "Good strategy, human. Few think to use their environment." He grinned. "Though I expect Lady Rima had something to do with that lesson. She's a thorough teacher." "Indeed." The alien winked one of his 4 eyes. "Though perhaps she teaches you so well for reasons beyond tradition." Before Alan could respond, Rima appeared beside them. "Congratulations," she said coolly, though her eyes sparkled. "You've passed the first trial, though I'm not sure spilling drinks counts as honorable combat." "Hey, you're the one who taught me to use whatever advantages I could find." "I meant weapons training, not beverage warfare." But she was fighting a smile. "Come, we need to prepare for the second trial. And—" she hesitated. "We may have a lead on the artifact." They made their way to a private chamber where Grandmother Tutuns waited with several holographic displays. "Our security teams tracked the thieves' jump signature," she explained. "They're headed to New Vegas Station." "The gambling hub?" Alan frowned. "That place is huge. They could be anywhere." "Not anywhere," Rima corrected. "Our sources say they're planning to sell the artifact at an exclusive high-stakes poker game, which works perfectly with your second trial." "Let me guess. I have to win the game." "You have to get us into the game," she corrected. "It's invitation only, highest level of security, but a renowned courier might have the right connections." Alan grinned. "As it happens, I may know someone who knows someone." "Excellent!" Grandmother clapped her hands. "A covert mission to recover our sacred artifact while testing the potential groom's worth. How romantic!" "Grandmother, please." Rima's purple skin darkened slightly. "This is serious." "Oh, of course, dear." The older woman winked at Alan. "Though I must say, you two work very well together, almost as if it were meant to be." "We should go," Rima said quickly, grabbing Alan's arm. "We need to prepare." As she dragged him away, Alan couldn't help noticing how her hand lingered on his arm longer than necessary, and how, despite her protests, she hadn't actually denied her grandmother's observations. The hunt for the artifact was about to get interesting. New Vegas Station glittered like a jeweled spider's web against the void of space. Neon advertisements competed with starlight, and holographic dancers twirled between the docking bays. Alan's refurbished ship, courtesy of the Tutuns clan's mechanics, slipped into a private berth near the high roller section. "Remember," Rima said, adjusting her evening dress, a shimmering creation that made Alan's mouth go dry. "We're supposed to be a couple looking to make a big score." "Right. Just a regular date night of infiltrating a high-stakes poker game to recover a sacred artifact." He straightened his tailored jacket. "Should be simple. Is anything ever simple with you?" But she was smiling as she said it. They made their way through the casino levels, arm in arm. Rima's purple skin drew admiring glances, but her dangerous grace kept anyone from approaching too closely. Alan led them to a discreet door marked only with a golden symbol. "Your contact is here," she whispered. "Sort of." He pressed his palm to the scanner. "I may have forgotten to mention, I used to own this place." The door slid open to reveal a luxurious private club. A green-skinned woman behind the bar looked up and dropped the glass she was holding. "Alan Gass," she breathed. "You've got some nerve showing up here after selling to the syndicate." "Hello, Jazzy." He gave her his most charming smile. "How's business?" "Better before you walked in." Her eyes narrowed as she noticed Rima. "And who's this?" "My fiancé." The word felt strange on his tongue, but not entirely unpleasant. Rima stepped forward, her silver eyes assessing the bartender. "A pleasure. I understand you might be able to help us with an investment opportunity." Jazzy's antennae twitched. "That depends. Is it legal?" "Since when do you care about legal?" Alan asked. "Since the syndicate started breathing down my neck." She sighed. "But for you, what do you need?" "Invitations to tonight's private game." Her multiple eyes widened. "The Omega table? That's suicide, Alan. The buy-in alone would bankrupt a small planet." "Money isn't an issue," Rima interjected smoothly, producing a crystal card that made Jazzy's antennae stand straight up. Well, moving up in the world, Alan?" The bartender studied them both. "Fine. I can get you in. But be careful. There are rumors about tonight's game. Something big's going down." "We know," Alan said quietly. "That's why we're here." 20 minutes later, they were being escorted to a private elevator by armed guards. Rima's hand found Alan's, squeezing slightly. "Nervous?" he whispered. "Never." But she didn't let go of his hand. "Though I am curious, you owned a casino?" "Long story, involving 3 Martian princesses, a stolen quantum drive, and a very angry space whale. You'll have to tell me sometime. Survive tonight, and I will." The elevator opened onto a room that redefined luxury. The walls were made of pure force fields, offering an unobstructed view of space. The poker table at the center seemed to float on air, surrounded by the most dangerous-looking collection of gamblers Alan had ever seen. And there, at the dealer's position, was a familiar face that made his blood run cold. "Welcome." The dealer's chrome-plated skin caught the starlight. "I'm your host, Zink. Please join us. The game is No Limit Quantum Hold'em." "You know him?" Rima breathed in his ear. "Yeah." Alan forced a smile. "He's the one who helped me lose the casino." Zink's metallic face showed no emotion, but Alan could have sworn he was smiling. "Mr. Gass, what an unexpected pleasure, and with such lovely company." His photoreceptors scanned Rima. "Please take your seats. The game is about to begin." As they sat down, Alan noticed a familiar set of bags tucked behind one of the other players, a massive creature wearing what looked like a small fortress as armor. "That's our target," Rima murmured, pretending to check her cards. "But how do we—" "All in," the armored player suddenly announced, shoving a mountain of chips forward. Alan looked at his cards. Garbage. But he also saw something else, a slight shimmer around the player's armor that matched the stealth technology from the theft. "Call," he said, pushing his entire stack forward. Rima's silver eyes widened fractionally, but she said nothing. The other players folded, leaving just Alan and the thief. "Show," Zink commanded. The armored figure revealed a royal flush. Alan showed his worthless hand. Interesting play, Mr. Gass, Zink mused. Almost as interesting as the security alert I just received about two Nexari agents searching for stolen property. Everything happened at once. The armored player grabbed the bags and ran. Guards materialized from hidden doors. And Rima flipped the floating poker table with impossible strength, creating chaos. "Run!" she shouted, her evening dress somehow transforming into combat gear. "I'll handle the guards." "But go! The artifact is priority." Alan sprinted after the thief, leaving the sounds of combat behind. He tried not to think about Rima facing those odds alone, tried to focus on the mission. But something had changed between them, something that made leaving her feel wrong in ways he couldn't explain. The chase was on, through the glittering corridors of New Vegas Station. And somewhere behind him, a warrior princess was fighting her way through security to catch up. Just another night in the galaxy's most complicated courtship. The armored thief was fast, but Alan knew every secret passage in New Vegas Station. He cut through a maintenance tunnel, emerging ahead of his target in the secondary cargo bay. "Going somewhere?" he called out. The thief skidded to a stop, the stolen bags clutched tight. "You don't understand what you're involved in, courier." "Then explain it to me." Alan circled slowly, looking for an opening. "What's so special about this artifact?" "It's the key." The armor's voice modulator crackled. "The heart of Nexus isn't just some religious trinket. It's technology. Ancient, powerful. The kind that could shift the balance of power in this sector. And let me guess, you're working for someone who wants that power. Everyone wants that power." The thief's helmet retracted, revealing scaled features that Alan recognized from wanted posters. The Nexari just happened to find it first, but they're too traditional, too bound by their ancient ways to use it properly. A flash of purple in Alan's peripheral vision was his only warning. Rima burst through the ceiling panel, landing in a combat stance. Her evening dress was torn, revealing the battlesuit underneath, and her sunset hair had come partially loose from its elegant styling. Somehow, she looked even more stunning. "Those ancient ways," she growled, "kept the artifacts safe for generations." Until now. The thief reached into one of the bags, pulling out what looked like a crystalline heart that pulsed with inner light. Technology this powerful shouldn't be hidden away in some temple. That's not your decision to make. Rima stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing. "Return it, and you might survive this night." "Always so dramatic, you Nexari." The thief laughed. "But I have the artifact, and my employer's ship will be here any moment. What do you have?" Alan met Rima's eyes. In that moment, something passed between them. Understanding, trust, maybe something more. Without words, they moved in perfect synchronization. Rima launched herself at the thief, a direct assault that demanded attention. While she engaged in close combat, Alan circled around, retrieving something from his jacket pocket, a small device he'd palmed from the poker table. "You know what else I have?" he called out. The thief turned slightly, dividing attention between opponents. Really bad luck at cards. He activated the device, a dealer's quantum randomizer, normally used to ensure fair play. At close range, it played havoc with any complex technology. The thief's armor locked up, systems crashing. The artifact dropped from frozen fingers. Alan dove, catching it before it could shatter on the deck. The crystal heart hummed in his hands, warming to his touch. "Don't move," Rima commanded, holding a ceremonial blade to the thief's throat. "Alan, the artifact?" "Safe." He stood carefully, cradling the precious item. "Though I have to admit, it does feel powerful." "That's because it is." She produced restraints from somewhere in her battlesuit. "The heart of Nexus is said to resonate with those who are worthy, those who understand the balance between tradition and progress." As if in response, the artifact pulsed brighter in Alan's hands. The thief laughed despite the blade at their throat. "Don't you see?" they said. "It's chosen him, a human. So much for your precious traditions." "Our traditions," Rima said softly. Include accepting change when the universe demands it. She glanced at Alan, something unreadable in her silver eyes. Sometimes the old ways must adapt to survive. Station security finally caught up, along with a contingent of Nexari guards. As they led the thief away, Grandmother Tootens appeared, moving with surprising speed for her age. "The artifact!" she exclaimed. "Oh, well done, both of you, and working together so beautifully." She looked meaningfully between them. "Perhaps this is a sign, Grandmother." Rima's tone held warning, but Alan noticed she'd moved closer to him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. "We should return to the station. The final trial awaits." "Of course, of course." The older woman's eyes twinkled. "Though I must say, the way you two fought together, very romantic." Alan looked down at the artifact in his hands, then at the warrior princess beside him. The heart of Nexus pulsed once more, as if in approval. "You know," he said carefully, "I'm starting to think these trials aren't quite what I expected." Rima's lips curved in a small smile. "Nothing about you has been what I expected, Alan Gass." She took the artifact from him, her fingers brushing his. "Come, we have one more challenge to face." As they headed back to their ship, Alan couldn't help but notice that she didn't let go of his hand, and somehow that felt more significant than any artifact or trial. The final test awaited, but something told him they'd already passed the most important one. The final trial chamber aboard Alpha 9 station was smaller than Alan expected, an intimate space with viewing galleries for only the most important clan members. At its center stood a striking blue-skinned woman in an outfit that left little to the imagination. "Your final test," Grandmother Tootens announced cheerfully. "The trial of fidelity." Rima stood at Alan's side, her body radiating tension. After their return from New Vegas station, something had shifted between them, though neither had acknowledged it. "The rules are simple," the grandmother continued. "Resist the temptations of our most skilled seductress for one standard hour. Should you fail—" She gestured to the ceremonial weapons on the wall. The blue-skinned woman slinked forward, her movements hypnotic. "I am Sia," she purred. "Shall we begin?" Before she could take another step, Rima moved with blinding speed. Her fist connected with Sia's jaw in a precise strike that dropped the seductress to the floor, unconscious. "Trial concluded," Rima announced flatly. "Rima!" Her grandmother's eyes blinked in shock. "That's not how this works." "No one," Rima's silver eyes flashed dangerously, "touches my—" She hesitated, then finished lamely, "trial candidate." Alan fought to hide his grin. "Technically, she didn't touch me." "Shut up." But there was color in her purple cheeks. "We need to talk, privately." She grabbed his arm and dragged him from the chamber, leaving her grandmother fussing over the unconscious seductress. They ended up in a narrow maintenance corridor, barely wide enough for two people. "That was quite a punch," Alan said, very aware of how close they were standing. "Almost like you were. If you say jealous, I will throw you out an airlock." "Wouldn't dream of it." He leaned closer. "Though it's kind of hot when you're protective." Rima's hand shot out, pinning him against the wall. "I am not protective. I am maintaining the integrity of our sacred traditions." By knocking out the sacred seductress? She was clearly an imposter. Rima's face was inches from his now. "Working for our enemies." "Of course. Just like that server who smiled at me yesterday was an assassin." She was being suspiciously friendly. "And the docking bay attendant who offered to clean my ship. Obviously planning to sabotage it." Alan raised an eyebrow. "You know, for someone who doesn't want to marry me, you're acting an awful lot like a jealous—" The rest of his sentence was cut off by alarms blaring throughout the station. Red emergency lights began flashing. "Warning," the station AI announced. "Multiple unauthorized vessels approaching. Hostile intent detected." Rima released him, instantly shifting to warrior mode. "The rival clan," she said. "They must know we recovered the artifact." "Perfect timing," Alan muttered. "I was about to get thrown out an airlock anyway." They raced to the command center where holographic displays showed a fleet of warships dropping out of hyperspace. Their designs were similar to Nexari vessels, but darker, more aggressive. The Shadow Clan, Grandmother Tutoon spat the name like a curse. They've always coveted the heart of Nexus. Then why steal it? Alan asked. Why not just attack directly? Because they're cowards, Rima growled, already checking her weapons. They needed to prove we were too weak to protect it. Now they come in force. The station shuddered as the first volley of weapons fire hit the shields. Nexari warriors rushed to battle stations, but Alan could see they were outnumbered. We need to get the artifact to safety, Grandmother said. There's a temple ship waiting at the emergency coordinates. They'll be watching for that, Rima countered. We need a diversion. She turned to Alan, those silver eyes intense. How fast is your ship now? He grinned. With your clan's upgrades? Fast enough to give them a chase they won't forget. Good. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Because we're about to do something incredibly stupid. My favorite kind of plan. A massive explosion rocked the station. Through the viewport, they watched Shadow Clan boarding craft attaching to the outer hull. They're coming for the artifact, Grandmother warned. Our warriors will hold them off, but no time, Rima cut her off. Grandmother, trust me. I have a plan. She grabbed Alan's hand. Come on, courier. Time to make a delivery. They sprinted through chaos-filled corridors, dodging panicked civilians and rushing warriors. The heart of Nexus, secured in a protective case, pulsed with energy that seemed to match the rhythm of Alan's racing heart. They reached his ship just as the first boarding parties breached the station. The sounds of combat echoed through the docking bay. Want to tell me the plan? Alan asked as they strapped in. Simple. Rima's fingers flew over the weapons controls. We make them chase us. While the real artifact goes to the temple ship. She smiled dangerously. Who said anything about a decoy? The ship roared to life, its enhanced engines humming with power. On the sensors, they could see Shadow Clan vessels moving to block their escape. They're not going to just let us leave, Alan warned. I'm counting on it. Rima's silver eyes gleamed with battle light. Show me what this ship can really do. Alan's hands tightened on the controls. Hold on to something. He engaged the engines at full power, throwing them back in their seats as the ship shot forward. They threaded through the closing net of enemy vessels, weapons fire lighting up space around them. Behind us, Rima called out, returning fire with practiced precision. 3 pursuit craft. Only 3? I'm insulted. He threw the ship into a series of maneuvers that would have torn apart the old vessel, but the Nexari upgrades held strong. They wove through the battlefield like dancers, each anticipating the other's moves. Left, Rima shouted, and Alan was already banking before she finished the word. A torpedo shot through the space they'd just occupied. Rima's return fire caught one of their pursuers in the engines, sending it spinning away. Nice shot. Nice flying. Their eyes met for a moment and something electric passed between them. Then more alarms demanded their attention. They're powering up their main weapons, Rima reported. We need to jump soon. Jump where? They'll track us. Exactly. She smiled that dangerous smile again. Ever been to the Maelstrom Nebula? Alan's eyes widened. The navigation hazard? The place where ships go in but don't come out? Scared? Terrified. He punched in the coordinates. Let's do it. The ship's jump drive spun up, reality preparing to bend around them. But before they could engage, a massive energy beam from the Shadow Clan flagship caught them in a tractor field. No! Rima's hands flew over the controls. They're pulling us in! Alan watched the power reading spike dangerously. If we try to jump while they have us, we'll tear the ship apart. She met his eyes. Ideas? He looked at the artifact still pulsing with that strange rhythm. Then at the woman beside him, fierce and beautiful in the flashing lights of battle. One, he said, but you're probably going to hate it. Whatever you're thinking, Rima said, studying his expression. Stop thinking it. Too late. Alan reached for the artifact's case. You said this thing resonates with those who understand balance, right? Between tradition and progress. Yes, but her eyes widened. No. Alan, the heart of Nexus isn't meant to be. He opened the case. The crystalline heart floated up, its pulsing light filling the cockpit. Energy coursed through him, ancient and powerful, yet somehow familiar. Trust me, he said softly. For a moment, Rima looked torn between hitting him and something else. Then she nodded once, sharply. If you get us killed, I'm going to be very annoyed. Noted. Alan closed his eyes, letting the artifact's energy flow through him. He could feel the ship around them, the tractor beam holding them, the vast expanse of space. More than that, he could feel Rima beside him, her presence burning bright like a star. The heart of Nexus pulsed faster, matching their heartbeats. Alan opened his eyes, which now glowed with the same inner light as the artifact. "Hold on," he whispered. He threw all power to the engines, but instead of fighting the tractor beam, he used its pull. The ship spun toward the Shadow Clan flagship, accelerating. "Alan!" Rima grabbed her controls. "What are you—" "They want the artifact?" Energy crackled around him. "Let's give it to them." Their ship shot toward the flagship's hangar, the tractor beam pulling them in faster than safety protocols allowed. Warning alarms screamed as they crossed the magnetic barrier at dangerous speed. "Impact in 5 seconds," Rima shouted. "Perfect." Alan grinned, the artifact's light blazing around him. "Want to see a trick I learned in courier school?" He cut power to the engines and engaged the emergency brake thrusters, all of them, simultaneously. The ship flipped end over end, bleeding off momentum in a maneuver that should have torn them apart. But the heart of Nexus pulsed, its energy somehow holding them together. They crashed into the hangar deck, skidding sideways through rows of parked fighters. Chaos erupted as Shadow Clan warriors scrambled to respond. "Still alive?" Alan asked, checking on Rima. She was already unbuckling her restraints, battlesuit materializing around her. "Unfortunately for you. Now what's the rest of this brilliant plan?" "Would you believe me if I said this was as far as I got?" Surprisingly, yes. She armed her weapons as enemy troops surrounded their ship. "At least we'll go down fighting." Actually, Alan held up the still glowing artifact. "I was thinking of trying something else." Before she could stop him, he opened the ship's hatch and stepped out to face the Shadow Clan warriors. The heart of Nexus blazed in his hands, its light filling the hangar. "Hey!" he called out. "Question for you guys. What happens when ancient technology meets modern weapons?" He thrust the artifact forward, channeling its energy like he somehow knew he could. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Every piece of technology in the hangar weapons, armor, systems simply shut down. Shadow Clan warriors found themselves trapped in powerless armor. Weapon systems died. Even the artificial gravity flickered. "That," Rima said, stepping out beside him, "was either brilliant or the stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Why not both?" She laughed, a sound of genuine surprise and delight that made his heart skip. "You continue to surprise me," Alan gasped. Good surprised or bad surprised? Instead of answering, she grabbed him by the front of his jacket and pulled him into a kiss. The heart of Nexus flared between them, its energy swirling around them like a storm. Every piece of technology in range surged and sparked. When they finally broke apart, the hangar was in chaos. Shadow Clan warriors were retreating from the malfunctioning equipment. Through the magnetic barrier, they could see other ships in the fleet experiencing similar problems. Was that— Alan had to catch his breath. "Was that the legendary weapon-grade flirting you mentioned?" "Shut up." But Rima was smiling, her silver eyes bright. "We should—" The ship's comm crackled to life with Grandmother Tutun's voice. "If you two are quite finished causing system failures with your personal moments, the Shadow Clan fleet is retreating, and we have some matters to discuss." Back on Alpha 9, the celebration was in full swing. The Shadow Clan's retreat had turned into a rout when their systems kept malfunctioning mysteriously. No one seemed to understand exactly what had happened, though Grandmother Tutunes kept looking between Alan, Rima, and the now quiet heart of Nexus with knowing smiles. The final trial, she announced to the gathered clan members, has concluded unusually. Alan stood before the clan council, trying not to fidget in his formal attire. Rima stood nearby, her warrior's outfit replaced by ceremonial robes that somehow made her look even more dangerous. The trial of fidelity was... The grandmother paused diplomatically. Interrupted. However, given recent events, I believe we can consider it completed. After all, what greater proof of loyalty than risking one's life for the clan? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Rima stepped forward. "Grandmother," she said formally, "if I may speak?" "Of course, dear." Rima turned to face Alan, her silver eyes unreadable. "The trials are complete, and you have proven yourself worthy by our ancient laws. However," a slight smile played at her lips, "I am officially rejecting the marriage proposal." The crowd gasped. Alan raised an eyebrow. "Should I be offended?" "Let me finish." She moved closer. "By the customs of our people, I declare you my personal enemy." Another gasp from the crowd, but this one was followed by knowing chuckles. Grandmother Tutunes actually clapped her hands in delight. Alan looked around uncertainly. "Is this a good thing or a bad thing?" "That depends," Rima's smile turned predatory, "on how fast you can run." Understanding dawned. "This is about the kiss, isn't it? You used a sacred artifact and forbidden techniques to overwhelm my defenses." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Such an act demands retribution. I seem to remember you kissing me." "Details." She waved a hand dismissively. "The point is, you have committed an act of war against me personally. By our traditions, I must now hunt you across the galaxy until honor is satisfied." Alan grinned. "And how long might that take?" "Oh, years, probably. Maybe decades. I am very dedicated to tradition." Grandmother Tutun stepped forward, beaming. "Then it's settled. Alan Gass, you are officially released from the marriage contract but bound by the declaration of personal enmity. Rima will pursue you throughout the stars, engaging in regular battles of..." She winked. "Honor." "And the artifact?" Alan asked. "The heart of Nexus has chosen both of you as its guardians," the grandmother said. "It will remain in the temple, but you both have proven worthy of its power, particularly when working together." "Speaking of working together," Rima said casually, "you have exactly 1 hour before I begin my pursuit. I suggest you run." Alan bowed to the council, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "You know, most people just exchange phone numbers." "Boring." Rima's silver eyes promised both danger and adventure. "Now go. Give me a chase worthy of our traditions." An hour later, the Rusty Hope, now significantly less rusty thanks to Nexari technology, broke orbit around Alpha 9. On the bridge, Alan checked his new systems with satisfaction. The comm crackled to life. "Ready or not," Rima's voice purred. "Here I come." Alan watched her sleek warship appear on his sensors and smiled. For the first time in his life, running away felt exactly like coming home. "Catch me if you can, Princess." The stars stretched into lines as both ships jumped into hyperspace, beginning a chase that would become legend in multiple sectors. Some say they're still out there, conducting their battles of honor among the stars. And if those battles sometimes involve more kissing than combat, well, that's just the modern interpretation of ancient traditions. After all, as the heart of Nexus had shown them, the greatest power comes from finding the perfect balance between the old and the new, between duty and desire, between running away and running towards something amazing. Or, as Grandmother Tutunes likes to tell it, sometimes the best way to fall in love is to become enemies first. Epilogue. Years later. The luxury cruiser, Heart's Hope, a perfect blend of Nexari engineering and human comfort, drifted in orbit around a pristine blue world. On the observation deck, Alan Gass watched his family with quiet joy. 7-year-old Luna, Lun, to everyone except her grandmother, practiced combat forms with Rima, her purple skin a shade lighter than her mother's, her black hair catching starlight. 5-year-old twins Rena and Anka tumbled through zero-gravity exercises, their silver eyes glowing with mischief. And little Taya, barely 3, sat on Alan's lap, trying to braid her sunset-colored hair just like Mama. "Your form is sloppy," Rima critiqued Luna's stance, but her smile was proud. "You're too much like your father, all improvisation." "That improvisation worked out pretty well for us," Alan called out. "Or should I remind you how our great chase actually ended?" Rima's silver eyes softened at the memory. Their game of cat and mouse had lasted 2 glorious years before a particularly spectacular battle had ended with them eloping to a small temple on the edges of known space. Grandmother Tutoon still complained about missing the ceremony, though she'd more than made up for it with the 4 subsequent naming celebrations. "Daddy," Taya tugged at his sleeve, "tell the story again, about the artifact and the kiss." "Again? Don't you get tired of that one?" "Never," the twins chorused, floating over. Even Luna paused her practice to listen. Rima joined them, settling beside Alan with fluid grace. "Well, husband, will you tell the tale of how you earned your greatest enemy?" Alan pulled her close, their children gathering around. Through the viewport, a shooting star traced its path across space. It all started with a broken ship, some heavy bags, and a very sneaky grandmother. The children giggled, having heard it 1,000 times but always wanting one more telling. As Alan recounted their adventure, Rima's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. The heart of Nexus, now safely enshrined in the temple they frequently visited, had shown them the truth. Sometimes the greatest traditions are the ones you make together. And somewhere on Alpha 9, a grandmother was already planning celebrations for the next generation of Gas Tutoon's warriors, each one a perfect balance of ancient ways and new beginnings. After all, as Rima always says, the best enemies make the greatest loves. The end.